Central Africa is concerned. And as usual on Thursdays, we're joined by our geopolitical analyst, Aaron Gambi, to unpack some of these stories that you need to get in the know about. Aaron, how are you on this Thursday? Good morning.
Good morning, Asanda. I'm doing very well, and good morning to our listeners today.
And you do sound very well. You sound very energetic this morning, and thanks so much for joining us. So, today on our Central Africa Wrap, we start with Chad. The country is struggling as Sudanese are fleeing their home country, coming into Chad to seek refuge from the attacks under Al Fasher that are happening in Sudan. But Chad also already having its own economic woes. So, what can you tell us about the Sudanese who are fleeing their country coming into Chad and how Chad is not coping?
Yeah, the situation in Chad is very unfortunate. We do have a lot of refugees that are leaving Sudan because of the war, which has gone on for over 30 months now, a very long period of time. And I think the people that are displaced from Sudan, both externally and internally, are about 12 million people. And about 3.4 or 4 million are actually in the neighboring countries to Sudan. And Chad, to be specific, is a place that is very easy for these refugees to cross over into. And most of them have been fleeing to go to Chad for, of course, safety. But when they get there, one of the problems we see now is an issue of hunger. It is a humanitarian crisis. Chad cannot feed these people. The government of Chad has reached out to the international community and specifically the United Nations Human Rights Commission for Refugees. And they're doing everything they can to try to help rescue the situation. But it doesn't seem like there's much that is being achieved because the situation still remains dire. You're talking about hygiene, you're talking about issues of basic commodity access to water. As we speak, some of the refugee camps in Chad lack water for these refugees to have access to. So it is a very bad situation. And of course, hunger is one of the big things that is going on there.
So, 12 million people from Sudan being displaced and the humanitarian crisis not looking like it's going to be abated anytime soon. So far, for those Sudanese who were already in Chad, how has Chad been coping with that? As you mentioned, there's been aid cuts. Some of the refugee camps don't even have water.
Yeah, Chad has been trying to do what they can to establish these humanitarian efforts in the refugee camps. But like I said, a crisis like this one is not something that a country budgets for. It's not something that a country prepares for. But Chad has been doing everything to take in as many refugees as they can, despite the fact that most of these refugees, they're coming with nothing and they find absolutely nothing to start with. But I think the UN Human Rights Commission for Refugees has been also helping. But the situation in terms of accommodation, in terms of basic education for some of these kids that are crossing the border, because people are fleeing in thousands with their families, the water itself, access to clean water, all of these are a challenge that Chad is trying to grapple with. And we're yet to see how they do. But I think that they need to have help from the international community as soon as yesterday. Otherwise, the situation can get out of control.
Right, let's go to Angola now. The country has officially launched its first National Civil Aviation Academy, and this to strengthen aviation capacity. How significant is this for Angola?
Well, it's quite significant because Angola wants to set up this academy to train pilots, aircraft controllers, technical operators, and other aviation specialists, with the goal of trying to make Angola the hub for aviation in the region. At least this is what the Minister of Transport is trying to underscore and has been communicating that this academy will play a critical role in positioning Angola as a continent continental aviation hub. Now, if this is going to be a successful project, we're yet to see. But if Angola can succeed, of course, it will bring a lot of revenue to the country, create jobs, but also it will position Angola to be viable in terms of doing business with other, especially other countries in the region and in the continent at large.
Let's go to the DRC now, where around 200,000 people are reportedly having been fled or having fled their homes in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The United Nations is saying that the M23 rebels have entered the strategic town of Uvira. What's going on there?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting situation, and you will see that this actually happens just few days after the so-called Washington Peace Accords, which were signed by the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, and the president of the DR Congo, Felix Tshisekedi. They came to the United States, met with President Donald Trump, and sat down and exchanged pleasantries and gave speeches and shook hands and claimed that this is the end of a conflict which has been going on for 30 years. Lo and behold, a few days after that, we see that the M23 have actually advanced and actually captured the last major city in the eastern part of the DR Congo, which is the Uvira. And this is very close to the border with Burundi. And so, um, you know, it tells you that we haven't learned anything, especially as Africans and African leaders, in terms of how we can settle our conflicts, how we can talk to each other, because there's no way that President Trump has the best interest of the people in the DR Congo, in Rwanda, rather than the Africans who live on the continent. I've seen a few efforts by some African leaders to try and bring this conflict to the end, but I don't think they've done anything sufficient. Therefore, we saw Qatar and the United States jump in and trying to settle this conflict, but they're doing this out of their own interest. President Trump has made it clear that he's only doing this so that he can have access, or American companies can have access to the mineral wealth of the Eastern DR Congo. And peace doesn't work like that.
Right.
That's a precondition for bringing these two parties together, which is unfortunate.
Right, exactly. Aaron, we're going to leave it there for today, but thank you so much. Always a pleasure catching up with you and getting your insights.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you, Asanda.
Great, thanks again. Aaron Gambi is a geopolitical analyst, giving us our Central African zooming into the news making headlines in this region of our continent. Let's get our news headlines. It's now 6:30 Central African time. Here's Jwalani Tulo Mwebe.